No, yeah,
Stream of
I'm
consciousness.
just absorbing it all because, like the work you're doing is absolutely outstanding. And, it's just there aren't a whole lot of people out there that are doing this. So so is it really just coming down to, like, for instance, someone emails you, right, and says, "Hey, I've been through X, Y, and Z."
This is not a paid endorsement, but I am a brand ambassador for Heckler and Koch for a reason. HK firearms are incredibly high quality, and when it's time to step up out of the entry tier, they're the only ones I recommend. You carry a gun just in case. Shouldn't it be an HK just in case?
Um, what's typically like the vetting process? Like, how does that conversation usually
So
go?
I usually I will ask for a police report or a news article or something. People don't always have those, and I've had this is something I never talked about publicly before, but I have a couple in the can that I'm not putting out because my BS alarm went off on them. They just wanted to be on the show, I think, which is unfortunate. But you got to, one of the reasons I think that I'm above average at interviewing is because I did it for years in law enforcement. And it was a different kind of interview, most for the most part. Mostly I interviewed bad guys in law enforcement, and now I'm interviewing self-defenders. But what it gave me was I think, an above average BS detector. If someone's making up a story, I've done thousands and thousands of interviews. I was the guy they would ask to interview. Another agent would be like, "Hey, can you come sit with me on this interview and talk to this guy?" Because I had the ability at 3 a.m. in a stinky, dark, depressing cinder block room with a guy handcuffed to a stainless steel table who doesn't want to be there, to walk into that situation and massage that guy. It's going to sound gross, but look, I'm dealing with serious bad guys doing serious bad things, and I got to get on their good side. So massage that guy for 45 minutes. Now we're just talking. We're just getting the floodgates open a little bit. And then within the next hour or two, I've got him on tape admitting to every single element of this federal felony he's just committed or that we've arrested him for. And that, I think, that is a special lane that I'm in. Not a lot of people can do that. So that's one of the reasons I thought, hey, this might be a good idea. Back to your point, the vetting process is not rigorous. Is it possible somebody got on my show with a nonsense story that wasn't true and it made the air? Sure, it's possible. But what I don't want to do is somebody's brave enough to write to me and be like, hey, I'm willing to talk about this really critical incident, this very sensitive topic in my life. I'm not going to let the perfect be the enemy of the good by turning them down if they don't have the physical evidence, right? And that may be a best practice or not. I don't know. It's worked for me so far. There's been one episode that made it out where it sounds like the person mischaracterized some of the events,
Hmm.
which I had no way of knowing. And I had someone reach out to me, a listener reach out to me who knew something about the situation, and we resolved that. But yeah, the vetting process is really, you email me and I ask you for any documentation that you may have. If you don't have any, then we'll get on a call. I use something called Riverside.fm. You're using StreamYard. I use Riverside. It's similar idea.
Yeah.
And I'll chat with them for a while before we hit the record button. And if I sense they're full of baloney from the jump, I'll still go ahead with the interview. It doesn't mean it's going to make the air. I'll go ahead with the interview and kind of try to pick it apart a little bit and kind of feel them out and see if they're full of nonsense or not. But if you listen to the episodes, I think you will agree that everyone who's on there, uh, save a couple of people, definitely sound 100% genuine. Like they are reliving a really bad event that they went through. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I hear that from these interviews as well. It's almost like, okay, yeah, it's uncomfortable, sometimes maybe even painful, but they know the good that it does for people. And so that makes it worth it. Do you have any that really just kind of stick out? Like any that,
Yeah,
like, let's
I
say, for
haven't.
instance, like, let's say your next door neighbor says, "Oh man, I just found out Mike had a podcast." What would be like the first or second one that you would refer him to?
I get asked that from time to time, and it's actually a tough question because what you don't want to do is introduce them to the heaviest, most serious one that has ever been, with a bad outcome, because they might be like, "Oh, this is a little too heavy. This is not easy listening. This is not pop boy band stuff. This is serious business, and it's just too heavy." I think that's some of the reason why some people shy away from it. So I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I would probably direct them towards one with a good outcome. There's plenty of them like that where the outcome was fine, nobody got hurt or nobody got killed, and be like, if you want to hear the real gut wrenching stuff, there's one that came out the first week of September of last year, just before the conference, that's actually turned into a two-parter because they got the guy back on the line because he remembered a bunch of stuff about the aftermath that he hadn't remembered in the first one. And I can't, for the life of me, remember. I feel terrible. I can't remember the name, but I'll look it up right now.
Yeah.
And that ended up being a two-parter because it was so involved. The guy was a veteran and ended up having to shoot a guy who turns out was a fellow veteran who was robbing him at gunpoint. And the aftermath of that, the things you would never think of, to include the media showing up and mischaracterizing what you said and what you did, family members and fellow gang members of the decedent showing up and threatening you. This guy, he told me, maybe on the second episode, that a fellow, I guess, gang member of the person who robbed him and who he had to kill showed up a year later on the anniversary of the shooting. Our guy doesn't work there anymore, and this guy shoots the clerk thinking it's the person who shot his fellow gang member.
Man.
Getting sued by a coworker who, so I'll tell you briefly the story. He's at the cash register. I think it's his like second night, and this other girl's not been there for long. There's a manager. He's stopping to buy the coolers. At the cash register, guy shows up, shows a gun, says, "As long as you do what I tell you, nobody gets hurt." Pretty standard, typical Hollywood line to open a robbery. And he had just been told by his supervisor there is a time lock safe or some sort of safe that we cannot get into. I think it was time lock. Probably it was time lock. But we can't get into it. There's cash and we can't get into it. So he hears this guy say, "Do what I tell you and everything will be fine," and displaying a gun. And in his head, he connects a couple of dots. I'm not going to be able to do what he wants me to do. I'm not going to be able to open that safe. So I've got to figure it. He's armed, right? Our good guy's armed. And I've got to pick my moment because I'm going to get back there. And what he's envisioning in his head is, we're going to get back there and he's going to open the safe and he's going to say, "I can't," bang, bang, we're both dead. And the guy leaves with a case of beer or something. So he realizes, I've got to do something at some point. Tries to pick his moment. As they open the door to the manager's office, he attempts to shove the female co-worker into the office, bounces her head off the door frame. She's concussed. He now shoots basically right next to her head. So he's shooting right by her ear. Not at her outright, but like, so tonight is for life, and ends up shooting the guy and killing him. Well, she ends up turning around and suing him for damages, for injury, for all this other sort of thing. Now, is anyone who's carrying a gun and going over a mental rep considering the possibility that someone you're trying to save will end up suing you because the method in which you protected them was suboptimal or didn't go well? I certainly wouldn't. And it wouldn't occur to me, even after being a cop for 30 years in the aggregate, it wouldn't occur to me to warn somebody, "Hey, yeah, you might want to be careful on the anniversary of this incident because someone might show up to try to shoot you." Like, no one's thinking that. I'd never heard of such a thing on a robbery. Now, if I worked gangs for years. If you snitch, right, on a gang member, you're never safe for the rest of your life because they have long memory. They're going to want to come get you. But if you're just a civilian who gets into a kerfuffle with a gang member, usually the gang members don't target you and your family afterwards. But that's what happened to this guy. So it's a lot of things that I think are unexpected, a lot of things you couldn't possibly see coming. And those are two good examples of that, in my opinion.
Wow. That's a lot. Wow. So, yeah, that's still pretty heavy.
Yeah. I say all that to say that episode is the one that I get the most people commenting about the seriousness of it. And then the follow-up episode, same thing. While you think of another question, I'm going to look at what that episode was last September. And I really want people to be able to find it.
Yeah.
August. Okay,
So
hold on.
there was one interview that really kind of stuck out to me, and it was the interview of Officer Tim Gremmons from Illinois.
Skokie,
Yeah,
Illinois. That's right.
Yeah, had a shootout with the gangster's disciple, and that was really kind of crazy.
Yeah, John and I were just talking. We were doing badge cams earlier today. We were just talking about how many magazines should you carry as a law enforcement officer, and my answer is yes. All of the magazines. Like, don't go full Tackleberry, but since you brought this up, I'll make the point.
Yeah,
I think people complain about police militarization, and I understand the sentiment, right? But the police are now. This is not Mayberry anymore. It's not Barney Fife with a bullet in his pocket. There are bad guys out there with fully automatic weapons. So the police can't be behind the eight ball all the time. Now, there are times when the police go overboard and they decide, we have this equipment, we got to use it for something. There's a hammer looking for a nail. Yeah, absolutely, that happens. But one of the reasons I like this progression is cops can wear a tactical vest a lot of places now. Now, does it look more military or intimidating? Yeah, I guess. But I don't want my police to not look intimidating. And what it enables you to do, what I did, I'd have 2 or 3 mags on my vest, 2 more on my belt. And after hearing Tim Grammon's story about needing, I can't remember you remember how many rounds it was? It was a lot of rounds.
Like 140 something or
It's
something
some
crazy like
insane
that.
number. Yeah. As the one-armed deputy in the movie Unforgiven once said, I don't want to get shot for lack of shoot back. So I think more magazines are probably better. I'm not sure where we're going with that one. I'm sorry. I did find the episode, though. It
Yeah.
is from August 30th of 24. Army vet forced to fatally shoot armed robber. And Zach was the name of the guest. And I'm kicking myself for not remembering that. But that's probably the most, it's the heaviest one by far. It sparked the most discussion amongst people in the comments, and people come up to me. People walked up to me, fully 10 or 11 people at the conference, to talk to me about how impactful that episode was. So I think it's worthwhile.